A strong endorsement for the Shelter House Alcohol Management Program. Investigators nailed down the cause in a damaging house fire. And new developments as the search for the Malaysian airliner continues. Good evening and thank you for being with us. A shelter house program for people with a history of public intoxication and interaction with police is having a positive impact on its participants.
Those are the findings of a study into the managed alcohol program conducted by researchers at the University of Victoria. The shelter started the 15-bed pilot project 2 years ago, and as Dennis Ward reports, the results are encouraging.
It's a controversial way to treat people who are homeless and have a severe alcohol dependence. The managed alcohol program provides 15 people with housing, access to health care, and small amounts of wine throughout the day. And it appears to be improving the lives of those taking part, according to a study by the University of Victoria. Professor Tim Stockwell says there is also less of a strain on police, emergency departments, and detox facilities.
Participants report improved health and quality of life. We're fairly confident about there being large reductions in healthcare episodes and police contacts, particularly those involving custody. The participants say they feel much safer. They are at risk of being robbed, murdered, and committing those deeds as well when they're outside.
Those who qualify for the program were previously on the streets and drinking mouthwash or other forms of non-beverage alcohol. Shelter House Executive Director Patty Haidu feels the residents are getting their dignity back and have improved mental health.
I mean, the sense of family and the sense of connection, I think, is what gives people hope, that they're not alone and that there are people that care about them and that they're not struggling on their own. But we've seen amazing things happen. We've seen people reconnect with their families. The
15-bed facility is constantly at capacity, and Haidu believes Thunder Bay could make use of a 40-bed center. The program costs about $500,000 a year to run. The city kicks in $70,000. One of the best investments this council has made, says Mayor Keith Hobbs.
I think that this program has got great value for the cost. I've seen on blogs and social media where it's a waste of taxpayers' money, and I couldn't disagree more strongly. I think we need to continue with this program and supporting it.
Dennis Ward, TBT News.
Senior levels of government are kicking in a big share of two multi-million-dollar projects in Thunder Bay. The federal and provincial governments have each committed $1 million for upgrades to the century-old Wayland building. The $2.8 million contract was awarded by council to Tom Jones Construction last night. That work includes a total interior renovation of 3 floors in the building, previously occupied by the District Social Services Board. The owners of the Terrace Bay Pulp Mill, AV Terrace Bay, have committed to lease some of that space when the work is completed. Meanwhile, the province is also confirming funding to replace the Court Street Bridge over McVicker Creek. The reconstruction of the bridge is a high priority for the city. The provincial government is contributing $2 million towards the $2.2 million project. It's one of 10 infrastructure projects announced around the region, totaling $14 million. Thunder Bay Police are asking drivers to avoid one of the city's busiest intersections tonight. Melting snow has caused a flooding problem underground, which has knocked out the traffic signals at the corner of Memorial Avenue and the Harbour Expressway. City police are on the scene to help direct traffic around the intersection, but they're asking drivers to use alternate routes until the problem is repaired, hopefully later on this evening.
For the past couple of weeks, a handful of transport trucks have been bringing Western grain into Thunder Bay. It's due to the shortage of available rail cars from CN and Canadian Pacific. And for some desperate farmers, it's the last resort to try and salvage a record harvest before the spring hits. One grain truck can transport about 40 tons. That's less than half the capacity of a single rail car. And with only 10 trucks arriving per week, it's not a practical way of alleviating the backlog on the rail lines. But there's no other way to get the grain sold without the railroads moving it. Last week, the federal government announced plans to fine CN and CP Rail if they did not move 5,500 cars per week. The rail companies have a month to get traffic moving before facing $100,000 per day fines. Thunder Bay Port Authority CEO Tim Heaney expects cars to be rolling by then.
more weeks before we start to see the main inbound rail movement start. And I think you're going to see that, and it probably will be stronger than usual. But whether the incentive, how to enforce that, it's going to be tricky. But certainly it's something to show that people are very serious about getting this crop moved.
Even though the local shipping season is closed for now, the local elevators are nowhere close to reaching full capacity. Heaney estimates there is currently only 200,000 tons of grain in storage, with the capacity to store about 1 million tons more.
New details have emerged after a string of recent house fires in Thunder Bay. Fire officials say an overheated laptop is to blame for a fire that caused severe damage to a house on Ryerson Crescent last week. And careless smoking is the probable cause of 2 smaller fires that occurred on the city's south side. Phil Darlington has more.
The Thunder Bay Fire Rescue have been pushing for everyone to check their fire alarms, especially after a series of house fires this month. They're also telling people to check their laptops to make sure they have proper ventilation underneath them so they don't overheat. This comes after a fire started in the basement of a Ryerson Crescent home last week. The fire climbed through the house and made its way up to the attic. Luckily, no one was in the home at the time, and it turns out the fire was not started in the chimney, but instead, a laptop is to blame.
Put out a fire in the basement that had extended into the walls and the attic space of this house, so it did substantial damage to the house. Upon investigation, it appears that that fire is actually as a result of an overheating laptop. Certainly a laptop, it was an electrical fire, and a laptop was involved in that fire. In this case, a laptop was sitting on top of a couch, and that was the area of origin for the fire.
Fire officials are also reminding the public about careless smoking. That's the suspected cause in a pair of other fires, one at this house on Archibald Street on March 2nd, and another one at an apartment complex on Simpson Street on March 4th. Norland warns people not to be careless with anything that could start a fire.
So last week we had 2 apartment fires. One was in an older retrofitted home, and one was in an apartment building. In both cases, they were a result of carelessly discarded cigarettes or smokers' materials.
In the first instance, the cigarette butt was carelessly left on the sofa, but in the second case, it was a lot more dangerous as the people were actually asleep on the mattress that caught fire. Phil Darlington, TBT News.
A rule of law says innocent until proven guilty, but is that truly the case in Ontario? According to the John Howard Society, roughly 2/3 of the 70,000 people incarcerated in this province are being held on remand. That means they've been charged with a crime but have yet to be tried, convicted, or sentenced. As John Howard spokesperson Colleen Peters told a crowded room of concerned local residents this afternoon, many of those on remand are detained for non-violent offenses, yet are all held in high-security facilities like the Thunder Bay District Jail. The legal rationale behind this states that the safety of the community trumps the rights of the individual. But Peters points out that the remand population often has access to fewer programs and privileges than the convicted criminals.
We never know when someone on remand might be released, how long they'll be detained for, et cetera, et cetera. So services can't necessarily be provided. When we talk about the sentence population, because we know that someone's going to be incarcerated for a set amount of time, there's more consistency in the day-to-day operation for that individual, that there's more opportunity to provide services for someone who's sentenced versus sitting on remand.
Peters says she's not aware of an official limit to the length of time a person can be held on remand, but knows of instances where individuals have been remanded for up to 2 years while their case works its way through the legal system. She hopes through public education that taxpayers will begin to apply pressure on the provincial government to change what she calls an archaic system.
Thousands of firearms owners here in Ontario and across Canada are upset with an RCMP decision to classify a pair of popular rifles as prohibited. For roughly a decade, Canadians have been able to purchase them, but the new classification will essentially turn the owners of those rifles into lawbreakers. Prior to the change, the Swiss Arms Green Carbine and the CZ-858 variant rifles were considered unrestricted long guns and treated the same as hunting rifles and shotguns. There are approximately 15,000 of the rifles and their variants across Canada, including some here in Thunder Bay. The Harper government has suggested returning the firearms for a refund. But Christian Kuznak of the GMK shooting range on Water Street says dealers are unlikely to offer refunds, as that would cost the industry millions.
Bad. Functionally, there's nothing different between them and any other hunting rifle that's available. It's just that overall, aesthetics are different. And it makes it so that, you can make the public believe that it's evil because it looks that way. And the truth of the matter is that it's just a semi-automatic rifle. It's the same as any hunting rifle. We had it set up at the Murillo Gun Show this past weekend. We were handing out form letters to be sent to Prime Minister Harper, Safety Minister Stephen Blaney, and then our local MPs Rafferty and Hyer.
The government has put an amnesty in place for 5 years, giving owners of those firearms time to turn them into police. Kusnak says there is no way of modifying the rifles to make them legal.
Ontario's Liberal government will introduce legislation next week to freeze the pay of members of the provincial parliament for another 5 years. The Wynne government will introduce the bill to avoid an automatic pay increase for MPPs of 5 to 6% that would kick in April 1st. Government sources say the bill will extend the pay freeze, which was first imposed in 2009 to 19, and even then MPPs would only get a raise if the budget is balanced. The Liberals face an $11.7 billion deficit and say freezing the pay of politicians and their non-unionized political staff is the government's way of leading by example. Ontario MPPs are supposed to make 75% of what members of Parliament make, but have been capped at $116,500 a year for the past 5 years.
It's a few weeks after the actual anniversary, but officials at the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre have announced their plans for marking the 10 years since the hospital first opened its doors. Ontario Health Minister Deb Matthews will be in attendance at a special event being planned for this Friday. The hospital accepted its first patient on February 22, 2004. It was then fully operational by the next day. It was the culmination of years of lobbying, planning, and construction, and came with a final price tag of about $300 million. Keith Jobba was chair of the hospital board during the planning stages. He credits the new hospital with a number of subsequent improvements, such as the Northern Ontario School of Medicine and various research opportunities. But one major issue with the hospital in recent years has been a lack of beds and patient gridlock. Jobba says the 375 acute care beds is still the right number for Thunder Bay. The problem, he says, is the high number of alternate level of care patients taking up that acute care space in the hospital.
You need good, sufficient number for long-term chronic care patients. They haven't been supplied. That population is growing, and it's just essential that the government, the Ministry of Health, addresses this, because they shouldn't be wasting money on more acute care beds. They're not needed. They need more reasonably priced and better equipped long-term beds and those facilities.
The hospital's 10th anniversary celebration will take place at 11 o'clock in the morning on Friday.
Around 1.3 million people in our province have either type 1 or type 2 diabetes, and that number is expected to increase. So today, officials with Evergreen, a United neighborhood, hosted a fun event at Victoriaville Mall to raise awareness on the prevention of the disease. Michelle Sufi reports.
Most Canadians living with type 2 diabetes are completely unaware of it. But it can be a serious condition, and if left untreated, can lead to heart, kidney, eye disease, or even nerve damage. With change in diet and exercise, it can be delayed or even prevented. Alan Connor has type 2 diabetes and says if he was more aware of it, he could have made a lifestyle change sooner.
If I would have knew the signs and the reason of getting it, cut my sugar down, I think that's what the problem is.
Coordinator at Evergreen, a United neighborhood, Linda Brune says this event called Ever Fun is important because it aims to bring awareness to all ages of the community about diabetes prevention.
So if we could catch and inform people before they become full-blown diabetes, there's a lot of preventative measures through diet, exercise, dental care that can keep people living a really long and healthy life.
Northwestern Ontario has a higher population of persons with diabetes. Clinical coordinator for Jansen's Pharmacy, Greg Tinsley, says it's because of the larger First Nations population.
Unfortunately, healthcare isn't always as accessible as it possibly could be. There's a lot of great programs in the area that are trying to bring care to the different communities. Norwest Community Care, or Norwest Community Health Center has a diabetes mobile program that is currently going out to many First Nations communities providing diabetes services.
At the Ever Fun event, there were many organizations present to educate people about healthier eating habits and living an active lifestyle. Signs and symptoms of diabetes include some of the following: unusual thirst, frequent urination, weight change, extreme fatigue, and blurred vision. Many people may not display any symptoms at all and live with diabetes for up to 7 years, going undiagnosed. Rochelle Sufi, TBT News.
Let's turn to weather now, Fiona. It's slowly cooling up, but unlike, say, a couple of weeks ago, we're still seasonal.
We are definitely still seasonal, and although we topped out with a high of 5 Celsius, many of you may think, okay, I was outside, did not feel quite as warm as yesterday, so didn't feel like 5. Well, that's because the temperature actually has been dropping pretty much since midnight. It's been dropping throughout the day. For most of the day, we were hovering right around the freezing mark, which is what we should be seeing at this time of year, but that's also made for some very icy conditions out there with all the melting we've had in the last 24 to 48 hours. So if you are out there, please do take care. Winds were gusting up to 36 kilometers per hour this afternoon from the north-northwest. At this time across the region, we are just a couple degrees below normal in Thunder Bay, -4 in Atikokan, -2 in Fort Frances. A fair amount of sunshine, but if you head just a little bit further to the north, the temperatures suddenly drop into the double-digit range. Red Lake is currently at -12, -11 in Sioux Lookout, and of course cooler as you get up to Big Trout Lake. We've got lots of sunshine eastward, a few cloudy periods, but definitely cool in Greenstone. They're currently at -13, so a little on the chilly side. And more chilly temperatures moving into Thunder Bay, and those of us who are still enjoying single digits, because tonight a low of -21 is expected. Not necessarily the news a lot of us were looking for. And if you thought it was icy this morning and during the day, it's going to be even more so tonight. -21, partly cloudy, and winds from the north tapering off down to about 14 kilometers per hour overnight. Now, that is going to set the stage for a rather cool Wednesday, definitely below seasonal digits. And the good news is that's only going to last about a day or so, and then the warmer air is going to push back in. So it's going to be a lot of up and down. I've been saying that for the last couple of days. And as we head into late in the week, probably into Saturday and Sunday, we'll get another burst of cold Arctic air. So seasonal today, not tomorrow. Then we're back. Then it's cold again. You can see the pattern that's developing.
Just a reminder that Old Man Winter isn't done with this yet. So don't put the shovels away and be prepared for anything, right?
And keep the salt and things that you can put sand down on the ice, because it's going to be a very slick and dangerous spring, I have a feeling.
All right. Thanks very much, Fiona. Well, a couple of major new developments today in relation to the disappearance of that Malaysian airliner. We'll have the details of that story and more for you as your Tuesday News Hour continues.
Officials revealed what they believe to be the identities of the 2 men who boarded flight MH370 using stolen passports.
That massive search operation for the missing Malaysian Airlines flight expanded again today.
It has been 4 days since the Boeing 777 vanished from radar. And while some questions in the mysterious disappearance have now been answered, new questions are emerging. Andrew Lee has the latest from Beijing.
Officials revealed what they believe to be the identities of the two men who boarded flight MH370 using stolen passports. 19-year-old Puria Nur Mohammed Merdad and 29-year-old Delavar Syed Mohammed Reza. They arrived together in Malaysia from Iran using Iranian passports. Interpol believes they left Malaysia using stolen passports and is asking the public's help to confirm their motives.
Now we have images of the two persons concerned with names that they used on Iranian passports, and we'd like family members, friends, anyone to say, I know this person, he's my friend, he's my son, he's my brother, and by the way, he was leaving Kuala Lumpur to go to Europe to get a better life.
While the case of the unknown passengers may be nearly over, the big mystery remains. Resources from 10 countries are hunting the plane, including a submarine from Singapore, planes from Australia, and Chinese satellites which were repositioned to focus on the search area. They have doubled the search area, including the west coast of Malaysia and the Strait of Malacca. It's hundreds of kilometers away from the initial search and on the opposite side of the Malay Peninsula. They have expanded the search to include land as well.
It's a huge, massive area, but the assets that have been deployed by Malaysia and our friends, it's also been it's a huge, massive operation. So hopefully the combination of all these efforts, we will get some more tangible results.
In a wild twist, it is being reported that the Malaysian military has radar evidence that the plane flew for another hour on a different course after losing contact. This information changes the entire scope of the search. Yet, after 4 days of looking, the mystery continues. Not one piece of the Boeing 777 has been found. Andrew Lee, CBC News, Beijing.
Prime Minister Stephen Harper is heralding a new trade deal with South Korea. This is the first trade deal Canada has reached in Asia. Julie Van Dusen has more.
At this farm show in Ottawa, farmers are checking out the latest products, trading information, liking what they're hearing so far about the new trade deal with South Korea.
It's a wonderful thing. It gives us another market in which we can sell our product and support the Canadian beef farmer.
Tariffs on Canadian beef and pork will gradually be eliminated over 5 to 15 years. Hog producers say new markets can mean more than the traditional bacon and pork chops for customers.
From tongue, tail, ears, feet is another product that I guess maybe the Asian market has utilized as well.
There are other optimistic sectors anxious to crack the Korean market: whiskey, ice wine, lumber, aeronautics, seafood.
So this is very exciting for our industry that we're going to be able to remain competitive and get into this market.
Not so happy the automotive sector, worried that once the 6.1% tariff is removed from Korean cars, Canada will be flooded with Hyundais and Kias. In a statement, Ford says, "We believe that South Korea will remain one of the most closed automotive markets in the world under the deal negotiated by the Canadian government." Stephen Harper says Ford already has access to the South Korean market through the U.S. and its free trade deal with South Korea. This new deal, he says, makes it fair for other parts of the Canadian economy.
Allowing other Canadian companies and other Canadian sectors to have the same access that Ford already has.
But the union says thousands of jobs could be lost because Koreans buy smaller cars.
If you look at the urban centers, there's such congestion that people want small cars. That's not what we're building.
But the government says it's confident the deal will actually create thousands of jobs, as it will provide businesses and workers with a gateway to Asian markets. Julie Van Dusen, CBC News, Ottawa.
The mayor of Lac-Mégantic, Quebec, was in Washington, D.C. today, lobbying lawmakers for improved rail safety.
Tragedy like the one we witnessed in Lac-Mégantic cannot just stay without consequences.
Colette Roy-LaRoche was in the U.S. Capitol as part of a cross-border delegation of mayors and city officials. Roy-LaRoche says tighter safety standards are needed to prevent more tragedies like what happened in her town. 47 people were killed in Lac-Mégantic last July when a runaway train derailed and tank cars carrying crude oil exploded.
Crimea is just a few days away from a referendum on leaving Ukraine, and Russian soldiers and pro-Russia militia are now in full control of the airport in the capital. Flights coming from the Ukrainian capital Kiev and from Turkey have been turned back. Flights from Moscow are allowed to land. Susan Ormston was at the airport and has this report.
Well, this is a very empty airport here at Simferopol Airport. You can see behind me the check-in desks are all covered with bags. The notice on the board above me says that all flights are canceled except for those ones coming in from Moscow. So Ukrainian Airlines has been grounded coming into Crimea. That's new today. We're hearing that Russians again took control of the air traffic control this morning, and they have stopped flights coming in. There's no word, of course, how long that will last. This has happened once before since this crisis began 10 days ago when they closed this airspace to all flights, but that was a Ukrainian move. This time, we believe it's the Russian-controlled forces, certainly those pro-Russia people who are banning all flights from the rest of Ukraine. So that's one thing on the transportation front. The other we're hearing is that trains are running from Kiev here. It's a long journey, about 15 hours, but that they're not selling tickets for the week from the 10th to the 17th of March. Of course, that includes the referendum this Sunday. So attempts to restrict the borders even further and restrict people coming into Crimea, only those right now from Russia, unless you're driving in. And we're hearing that the borders are quite strict. They search cars, they may turn some back, and they're letting some through at the land borders.
Parti Québécois leader Pauline Marois says an independent Quebec would still welcome Canadians as tourists. On the campaign trail today, Marois discussed how to boost tourism in the province, saying there will be no borders or tolls in a sovereign Quebec. For his part, Liberal leader Philippe Couillard says the PQ's constant utterings on Quebec's future only hurt the province. Let's take a look at today's closing market numbers now. The TSX dropped about 35 points to 14,267. The Dow was down 67 to 16,351. And the NASDAQ fell back 27 points to 43.07. Our dollar was virtually unchanged at 90.07 cents U.S. Gold closed up $5 to $1,346 an ounce. And oil dropped just over $1 to close at $100 a barrel. Well, it's literally the biggest game of the year for the Lakehead University Thunderwolves. They were on the ice this morning practicing for a showdown in Ottawa this weekend, which is the proverbial must-win situation.
Yeah, they got to do it on the road, but it's like Game 7 of a playoff series. Anyone can win it, and here's their chance. And they're sort of lucky that it's the OUA's year to have 3 teams go to nationals, because in a normal year, they wouldn't be going. So here's a chance to save their season. Well, your Thunderwolves are holding out hope that they'll have one of their top scoring threats in the lineup when they travel to the nation's capital this weekend to battle Carleton in a one-game winner-take-all play-in to the CIS National Championship Tournament. Top-line center Mike Hammond hurt his ankle in the third period of Saturday's loss to Windsor. The third-year forward was held out of practice today. Ryan Benazzo now on Hammond's availability this weekend.
When the Wolves suited up for their Tuesday morning practice, there was one notable red jersey missing from Lakehead's top line. Assistant captain Mike Hammond was injured Saturday when he fell awkwardly into a check delivered by Windsor's Kenny Bradford late in the third period of a game that was already well out of hand. Hammond immediately limped to the dressing room and didn't return. Coach Bill McDonald remains hopeful that the skilled centerman will be back in time for Saturday's OUA bronze medal game against Carleton, but that's far from guaranteed at this point.
We don't know yet. I talked to him after the game on Saturday. He says it's an ankle that he's tweaked before and it shouldn't be a problem, but we kept him out, obviously, practice today, and we're monitoring it as we go and keep our fingers crossed. Hope he's all right.
If Hammond can't go, it'll be a huge blow to the Thunderwolves. They'd likely turn to either Carson Dubček or David Quinnell to fill the void left between Kellen Ainsworth and Jake Carrick. While they're both valuable depth players, neither has Hammond's skill with the puck.
Hopefully we won't get to that. As we're preparing today, we're thinking he's playing, and hopefully he's playing, and we'll take it as we go.
Chris Delalande, who was elevated to a top 4 defenseman role against Windsor, also missed Tuesday's practice with the flu. His status is also uncertain. The good news, though, is that rookie sniper Cody Alcock is on the mend after he missed Saturday's game due to illness.
I've got my energy back the last day there, so I still feel kind of under the weather, but that'll be good. I'm on my antibiotics, and I'll should be good to go.
And that's a big deal for a team that scored just 3 times over 2 games against the Lancers. Ryan Benazzo, TBT Sports.
Andrew Wilkins' Lakehead hockey career isn't over yet, but he has played his last game at the Fort William Gardens, as has fellow fifth-year senior Brennan Menard. When Wilkins stepped off the ice after Saturday's tough loss against Windsor, the captain admits it was an emotional moment for him.
I love playing here. It was the best 5 years of my life. I'd do 5 more if I could. It's tough. It's an unbelievable place to play. Great rink, great fans, best in the country, and I'm definitely going to miss it.
There's no time for nostalgia just yet. Wilkins and Menard's teammates want to send them off in style, preferably after they make their second trip to the national tournament.
We're playing for the seniors for sure. We want them to play as long as they can, and it's their last shot, so that's definitely who we play for.
Wilkie was my roommate first year up here, so it's been a long 4 years with him, and I kind of told myself in there that, next game's for those guys. We want to let those guys play as long as they can. So I think that's going to be a building block for us next week, is playing for those guys that graduate, keep their season going.
The Thunder Bay North Stars host Fort Francis Saturday night at the Gardens to open their 2-game total goal series. The winner gets to pick who they want to play in the SIJHL playoffs in the semifinals. NHL tonight, 9 games, including the Leafs in San Jose. And we've got Edmonton visiting Minnesota. Last night, the Columbus-Dallas game was postponed in the first period after Stars forward Rich Peverley collapsed on the bench following a shift. He's in hospital as doctors try to find a long-term solution to his irregular heartbeat. In Ottawa, Jason Spezza sends it to overtime, wiping out a 3-goal deficit for the Sens as he gets his 17th. But the Predators pull it out. So 4-3, Ryan Ellis denied on the breakaway, but it's Seth Jones following up to give Nashville the win. In Calgary, the Kings rally from a 2-goal deficit with 3 in a row, including Anze Kopitar's 20th. And they edge the Flames 3-2. In Vancouver, the Canucks race out to a 3-0 lead, then give up 7 goals in the third to fall 7-4 to the New York Islanders. And Matt Duchene off the lucky hop lifts it up and over Al Montoya. Avalanche ground the Jets 3-2. Tyler Bozak, Phil Kessel, each with 3-point nights as the Maple Leafs spring the upset of the night over the Ducks in Anaheim, 3-1. Canada captured a 7th medal today at the Paralympics in Sochi, Russia, by athlete Mark Arenz, a PEI. Won a bronze. He claimed a silver earlier in the week. And coming up Friday, our para-snowboarding team hits the slopes. Chris Brown has a profile.
Team Canada? Their uniforms really grab your attention on the mountain, but it's their incredible stories of overcoming debilitating injuries that's really remarkable about Canada's Olympic para-snowboarders.
I try and snowboard as normal as possible. Most people don't even know that I'm missing my leg when I'm out there snowboarding, and I kind of like to keep it that way. I'd rather be at the bar later and then find out and be like, whoa.
Canada's para-snowboarders say they feel the same weight of Olympic expectations as other athletes, but in their case, simply being here at all is remarkable. John Leslie had his leg amputated after he contracted bone cancer when he was 10. Ian Lockie broke several vertebrae in his back in a snowboarding accident in his 20s. With only minimal movement in his legs, he refers to himself as a standing paraplegic.
I have really large quads, which is what propels me around and what keeps me going. So yeah, I'm still able to walk, but I can't run, I can't jump.
Michelle Salt of Calgary is really still adjusting to her situation. It was just 2.5 years ago that a motorcycle accident left her bleeding on a highway and close to death.
I went from being a fitness model to missing a leg and being covered in scars and staples.
Competitive snowboarding, she says, gave her a new purpose.
This goal has kept me sane. This goal has given me a reason to wake up every morning, get out of bed, and to do my absolute best.
Everyone's on their own separate journey. Everybody's working just as hard to get there.
From their training base at Big White near Kelowna, they've worked all year to prepare for that one day of Olympic competition. It's Thursday when each will try to cap off incredible stories of rehabilitation with a trip to the medal podium. Chris Brown, CBC News, near Kelowna.
The Brooklyn Nets continued their hot streak at home last night against the team they're trying to catch for the Atlantic Division lead. Dwayne Casey's Toronto Raptors entered this one with a 4-game lead, and they came out on fire. Terrence Ross hitting the long ball from both sides of the court. He had a dozen points in the first quarter, including the dunk of the game here as the visitors led by 11. Second quarter, point guard Kyle Lowry will knock down 3 of his team-high 21 points. Actually, he led all scorers in this one. Toronto with a 1-point lead at the break. But the Nets would start to take over in the third. Mason Plumlee with the offensive board and bucket. The Nets then go on a 14-0 run to put this one on ice as Joe Johnson hits a pair of triples. Brooklyn wins its 8th in a row at home, 101-97. They now trail the Raptors by 3. Raps, though, doing all right. They won 9 of their last 12. And the NFL's oldest player is back for at least one more year. Indianapolis has re-signed 41-year-old kicker Adam Vinatieri, who made 35 of 40 field goals last year. Now the plays of the week.
Cole, the speedster, get on to Linder. What a move by Cole. Jumping back in front, shoots. Hedroff saved. Oh, my! What a stop by Hedroff on Cody Eakin.
Back comes St. Louis. He's leading it. Here's Oshie in front. Scores!
Watch TJ Oshie. Incredible moves.
Here's Marchand throwing it in front. Oh, it's blocked away, and Tim Thomas makes an outstanding save.
On David West.
4 straight points.
Ooh, yeah!
Here come the Clippers. Paul with the ball. Blake Griffin from Chris Paul.
In flight here. McDavid trying to go in and out on Peters. Gets around him. Into its goal on the forehand. Tries to stuff it in. Bowman cannot stop it as McDavid scores a beauty.
Just an unbelievable.
And the Blue Jays over Detroit in spring training 3-2. Dan Johnson with his 3rd homer of the spring.
He also won an inter-squad game against the Canadian national team.
Yeah, 12-2.
Yay, Blue Jays. Biggest winning streak of the year.
Yeah.
Don't get used to it, though. Thanks, Randy.
All right, and if you want to get a chance to check out the Paralympics in Sochi, we do have them late night on CKPR Thunder Bay with more. Here's your complete lineup on Teletalk.
Tonight on Global Thunder Bay at 8, it's NCIS Los Angeles. And a security guard's murder uncovers a terrorist threat. At 9 on NCIS, the team investigates the murder of a woman who impersonated a soldier. And at 10 on Chicago Fire, Detective Lindsay questions suspects in Keeler's disappearance. Over on CKPR Thunder Bay at 8, Rick Parties in Manitoba on the Rick Mercer Report. At 8:30, we've got our best political pundits and news of the weird on 22 Minutes. Then at 9 on Arctic Air, Blake and Lindsay's routine prisoner transport becomes a fight for life. And at 11:35, we've got your highlights of the day from the Sochi Paralympics. Teletalk is brought to you by Points, the traffic ticket specialists.
Well, above seasonal day yesterday, relatively seasonal today. Fiona, cold temperatures on the way.
Yeah, it's cooling off in the west a little bit, or at least a little bit west. And today, although we topped out with a high of 5, temperatures dropped all day, and we hit actually around the freezing mark pretty much for most of the day under variable cloud. Now, if we take a look at what's been happening today in Vancouver, well, 10 Celsius and just a few clouds at this hour. As we head into Prince George, mainly cloudy and a fairly sunny day in Edmonton. Calgary, not quite so much, but temperatures still above seasonal for them. And in Saskatoon, they saw a fair amount of cloud cover for much of the day. They're still above the freezing mark at 2. Regina's sitting right there, and temperatures have been also dropping all day with just some variable skies for most of the day. In Winnipeg, they are at -11 under cloudy skies. It was a fairly cool day, and that's the cool air that is also going to be heading our way as we head into southern Ontario, Toronto. Not a bad day. On the plus side, they're currently at 7 Celsius, just some clouds right now. but temperatures are falling and about 10 centimeters is on the way for Wednesday. Meanwhile, Ottawa and into Montreal that are at about 2 Celsius. They are also going to see a similar trend as Toronto, but they're expecting maybe about 5 centimeters. Quebec City at 1 is under a blowing snow warning. They're expected to be hit by about 20 centimeters of snow by Thursday morning. Speaking of warnings, the Maritimes is just full of them. Now, Fredericton is currently at 1 under cloudy skies. They have a snowfall warning. They too are expecting about 20 centimeters by the time Wednesday night is through. Charlottetown seeing some light snow. We're sitting right on the freezing mark at this time. They're under a storm watch. Halifax also sitting on the freezing mark with some snow, but they're actually under rainfall warning. The systems that are moving in are going to hit a warmer air mass around Halifax and southern parts of Nova Scotia. So they could see up to about 40 millimeters of rain by Thursday morning. Meanwhile, St. John's, just a few clouds. Are currently at -7. It was a fairly clear and windy day today, but they too are expecting some rain for the next little while. This high-pressure center today moving in has brought some of a northwest flow, keeping things a little bit cooler, seeing those temperatures drop. Tomorrow you can see the snow in southern Manitoba. It's going to try to work its way in probably by late Wednesday night, maybe early Thursday. Might see some precipitation to the north. Once again, a lot of it is bouncing north or south of Thunder Bay. We're just on the edge, so there's some fluctuation on how much we're going to be hit with. Now tonight, temperatures very cool indeed, -21 up to about -25 as you head westward. Fairly clear, not looking too bad sky-wise, but those temperatures are certainly cool. Greenstone tonight, -28, -25 in Marathon. Sault Ste. Marie, -19 under a few clouds. And some sunshine tomorrow's temperatures try to rebound, but they're just not going to get back into seasonal values. We're looking at double digits on the minus side for tomorrow. To the east, to the west, slightly warmer, but still a good 8 degrees below the norm for most areas. At this hour, we're sitting on the freezing mark. Feels like -6, and tonight, wind chills could be closer to about -27 under partly cloudy skies. We've already warned you about all the ice. It's going to be out there, especially first thing in the morning. -20 is where we're starting our day, and we will top out with a high of -9. Then Thursday could see a few flurries, not a whole lot of accumulation. We're sitting right on the freezing mark for both Thursday and Friday. Could see a couple centimeters on Friday. This is our seasonal temperature. Then we hit the weekend, and the temperatures are going to drop again. So cold, warm, cold. That's all you need to know for the next little while.
Turning now to health news, it's not just kids who are logging too much screen time. Moms and dads, you're glued to smartphones and tablets 24/7. And the kids, well, they're noticing. Crystal Gamansing with the consequences of distracted parenting.
The reality is we multitask, and smartphones play a huge role. But a new study says when you're on your device, juggling responsibilities, your kids can lose out.
My middle child needs me to lie next to him so he can fall asleep. So that's, while he's lying beside me, I can read the news or catch up on connecting with people and stuff like that.
Dr. Jenny Radowski and a team of researchers at Boston Medical Center conducted an observational study to see how kids react to our phone use. They watched 55 caregivers out with young children at restaurants. 40 were using their devices. Of those, 16 were heavily engaged on the screen. In one situation, a researcher observed a child lifting the head of his caregiver away from the screen. That kid had his hand brushed away. In another situation, the kid was kicked under the table.
They seemed to be more engaged with the device than with the child that they were with.
When parents are distracted, there's no interaction.
And the best thing for developing minds is to build that relationship where the parent's looking at the child, where the child's looking at the parent, they're engaging in conversation. It's not a time to withdraw, close in, and do your own thing.
Those moments of connection or those face-to-face interactions, kids' brains are wired to learn from those.
The researchers also noticed some kids acting out in order to force a connection. The American team admits the study lacks context in terms of what the caregivers were doing on the device. The paper is meant to be a snapshot to make parents think twice.
even in talking in front of a camera right now, these two are like acting up because they're like, well, you're not paying attention to me, right?
Experts suggest when you set screen time limits for your kids, you set them for yourself as well. Crystal Gamansing, Global News.
Time of year when weather can be a little confusing. What was it, 9 yesterday, minus 21 tonight? The up and down temperatures have got everybody a little bit upset. There's some guys south of the border, though, in Duluth have figured out how to have fun no matter what the temperature. We'll have that for you right after these words. Okay, so why ski or snowboard at this time of year when you can actually swim? Take a look at this brand new winter sport dreamed up south of us by a couple of guys in Duluth.
Snow swimming! Snow swimming!
Yeah, that's right, the brand new sport of snow swimming. If that doesn't look comfortable, folks, you're probably right, it isn't. At least, though, it would be refreshing. Yeah, we're going to go with that, refreshing. One way to get in every last snowflake before the spring melt.
I've only ever done that when I've been in a hot tub, then you jump out for a quick second and run back in. I didn't.
My dog was doing that the other day.
Your dog has a fur coat and is a lot smarter than these guys. That'll do it for tonight's Look at News, Weather, and Sports. Thanks for being with us. Have a great evening.